roll call.
Okay, we're going live in just maybe 3 seconds now, so I'll just pause shortly.
Okay.
And we are live. I can see the bubbles coming through. Okay. Hey, everybody. It's good to see y'all again. September 14th, 2021. We thought we'd be in person, but here we are again remote. So we'll get back one day. I'll now do the roll call. Mayor Lydia Lavelle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Barbara Fucci.
Present.
Councilmember Jacqueline Gist.
Present.
Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Present.
Councilmember Susan Romaine.
Present.
Councilmember Damon Siles.
Present.
And Councilmember Sammy Slade.
Present.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, again, this is the Tuesday, September 14th meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. Welcome back, everyone. It's good to see you all. So our first item on our agenda, an extremely important item, is the swearing in of our town manager, Richard J. White III, who has been on the job for a while, unsworn in, I guess. So Richard, we can't do this in person, but we're going to do it right here, and that'll be pretty awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recite the oath, and if you would just repeat it after me, and I'll kind of say it in little short sentences here. And so if you would raise your hand and then repeat after me. I, Richard J. White III.
I, Richard J. White III.
Do solemnly affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
That I will support and maintain the Constitution.
That I will support and maintain the Constitution.
And laws of the United States.
And laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of North Carolina.
And the Constitution and laws of North Carolina.
Not inconsistent therewith.
Not inconsistent therewith.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office.
As town manager of the town of Carrboro.
As town manager of the town of Carrboro.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right, it's official. You are our town manager, officially sworn in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Very, very exciting. So, all right, then, folks, moving on here we usually start out our meetings with a poetry reading. And Kathy, we're not sure if Fred is able to join us tonight to do a poem or not. He is here. Good. So we're gonna bring over Fred Joyner, our poet laureate, to join us here in the council chambers and read us a poem. Kathy, I assume you're in the process of bringing Fred over.
Tempting to.
Okay. There we go.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, good evening, Fred. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's good to see you all. I am glad to be back and sharing some poems. I'm going to share a quick poem by one of my. We get ancestors that are our blood and kin, our immediate kin, and then we get ancestors that we choose based on various different things. And so Margaret Walker, the poet Margaret Walker, is one of those chosen ancestors. This is her new and collected poems. And I was, like Lucille Clifton, she's another poet that I revisit just all the time. I'll just pick it up and flip through. And I flipped to this one. And it was about my grandma. It's about grandmothers. And so it made me think, because my grandmother passed away many years ago now, but during the month of September. So lineage. My grandmothers were strong. They followed plows and bent to toil. They moved through fields, sowing seed. They touched earth and grain grew. They were full of sturdiness and singing. My grandmothers were strong. My grandmothers are full of memories, smelling of soup and onions and wet clay, with veins rolling roughly over quick hands. They had many clean words to say. My grandmothers were strong. Why am I not they? So that's Margaret Walker. It's a small little poem. That's what it looks like, lineage, but it's so heavy, right? There's so much in it. And if you would indulge me for 1 second, I just wanted a little shameless self-promotion. We just passed I guess that would be the 20th anniversary, or the 20th remembrance, I should say, of 9/11. And this anthology just came out. It's called Crossing the Rift. It's North Carolina poets on 9/11 and its aftermath. And I'm very honored to be included, have a poem in here, but all of our favorite North Carolina poets are in here. Miss Jackie is in here. So many people, and so many people who are not with us anymore. So go ahead, go and check this out. This is, I'm sure there'll be readings popping up now that it's officially been released. There'll be some readings popping up in our area. There was one this weekend in Winston-Salem. And so just wanted to highlight some North Carolina poets.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. Thanks for telling us about that. And thank you for your poem tonight and for rejoining us again. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good to see Fred. So moving on, folks, we have 3 proclamations here. The first proclamation is recognizing Hispanic Heritage Month. And Kathy, I'm not sure if we were able to get a hold of someone from El Centro or otherwise to join us for this.
I thought Pilar was going to be joining us, but I don't see her in the audience. So if anyone is here on behalf of El Centro, could you please raise your hand and I can bring you over? I don't see.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead and kind of go through this. This is one we issue every September about this time. And I'll go ahead and read it for our audience and for our council members. Whereas in 1968, Congress passed Public Law 9498, establishing National Hispanic Heritage Week. This was observed annually until 1989, when it was expanded to the period of September 15 through October 15 and became National Hispanic Heritage Month. This has been celebrated annually since then. And whereas September 15th was chosen as the starting date because of its significance in Latin American history, it is the date that 5 Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, declared their independence, while Mexico declared its independence on September 16 and Chile on September 18. And whereas Hispanic Heritage Month is a time to recognize the contributions and celebrate the achievements of Hispanics in the United States, it's a time when we acknowledge the vital impact of Hispanic Americans in developing the nation that we know and love. And whereas in today's polarized political and cultural climate, it is crucial we take this opportunity to celebrate the diversity of our nation, be honest in the accounting of our history, to give full credit to all who helped shape the United States. And whereas, according to U.S. Census Bureau data from 2019, 60.6 million people of Hispanic heritage live in the U.S., constituting 18.5% of the nation's population. North Carolina is one of 12 states with a population of 1 million or more Hispanic residents. And whereas from September 15 to October 15, every year in the United States, we honor the contributions of Latino and Hispanic communities with the celebration of National Hispanic Heritage Month highlighting diversity, culture, and traditions. The Hispanic League will present Virtual Fiesta 2021. El Pueblo will host a virtual event called La Fiesta del Pueblo 2021. The Hola Charlotte Festival 2021 will be held in person in Uptown Charlotte on October 9. And the links for all of these are on my proclamation that'll be on our webpage. Now, therefore, be resolved, I, Lydia Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim September 15 through October 15, 2021 as Hispanic Heritage Month in the town of Carrboro. I encourage all residents to join in this celebration of Hispanic history and culture, recognize the many contributions made by Hispanic Americans that have had such a deep and lasting influence on our nation, our state, and our community. So we'll just recognize that proclamation. Our next proclamation is one recognizing Small Business Week. And Kathy, are we bringing John over for this one?
We're going to bring Ray Mosher over.
Okay. Oh, good, Ray. All right. Let's see. Hey there, Ray. Good to see you. Can you hear us okay?
See me?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we
Hi.
can see you. You're moving around a little kind of awkwardly, but we can definitely hear you and see you. So it might
Okay.
it might be a little better without the video, but we certainly did see you. You're welcome to turn back on while I read if you'd like. Thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read the Small Business Week proclamation. Whereas in 1963, President John Kennedy signed a proclamation declaring the first observance of National Small Business Week. Since then, with the sponsorship of the U.S. Small Business Administration, the critical contributions of America's entrepreneurs and small business owners have been recognized nationally every year since. And whereas more than half of Americans either own or work for a small business, and they create nearly 2 out of every 3 new jobs in the U.S. every year. And whereas this past year has been unlike any year before, but America's small businesses have adapted and continue to play a central role in building a strong country. And whereas small businesses have met the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic with innovation and fortitude, many have transitioned from focusing on brick and mortar sales to online sales. Many have joined forces to face the challenge together, as was illustrated by Carrboro United. And whereas many still dream of starting their own business, for those who do, there are numerous sources of assistance. The Small Business Administration provides loans and free business counseling. In North Carolina, organizations and programs such as Business Link Carolina, the Carolina Small Business Development Fund, the Small Business Center Network of the North Carolina Community College System, the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, and many others can help prospective business owners learn how to start a business in our state. And whereas National Small Business Week is usually observed in early May, it was postponed until September this year due to the pandemic. In observance, the Small Business Administration will hold a virtual conference from September 13 through 15 with the theme Celebrating Resilience and Renewal. Attendance is free. Registration available on the Small Business Administration website. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Lydia Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim the week of September 13 through September 19 as Small Business Week in the town of Carrboro. I encourage all residents to support the small businesses in our community, appreciating and celebrating the personal touches and unique expertise that small businesses offer this, the 14th day of September, 2021. So, all right, that's a great proclamation. I thank John for bringing it forward to us. And Ray, I thank you for being here also. I don't know if you want to make any comments to the council or not.
I'd just like to say thank you so much. Carrboritos has been in Carrboro for almost 25 years now. And is it a little spotty?
Little, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I appreciate you all having me here. I wish I could put subtitles on or something. Carrboritos has been happy to be in Carrboro for almost 25 years, and Carrboro has been a wonderful place that supports small business, and especially during the pandemic when everything changed. There were so many resources and so much support and so much help and assistance in pivoting. I'm not sure how much of this you guys are getting, but it's really just a big thank you. And if you can hear me, welcome, Mr. White. We're so excited to have you here.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Ray. I think we heard all of that. I think Richard heard the welcome
great.
also. So yeah,
Great.
thank you. Thank you. And when I think of pivoting, I know you all have pivoted. You've been takeout. You were takeout for many months. And I understand, I know that a lot of restaurants have had to do that kind of adapting as well. So. All right. Well, again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Okay. And then folks, our last proclamation is the Mayor's Monarch Pledge Day. And so this, I think Laura Genway is going to join us for this. There's Laura. Hey, Laura. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you as well.
Thanks for being here. All right, y'all. So this is another, this is an initiative that just kind of got solicited for over the last year or so, and we thought it was an appropriate one for us to join. Whereas the monarch butterfly is an iconic North American species whose multi-generational migration and metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly has captured the imagination of millions of Americans. And whereas both the Western and Eastern monarch populations have seen significant declines, with less than 1% of the Western monarch population remaining, while the Eastern population has fallen by as much as 90%. And whereas the town of Carrboro recognizes that human health ultimately depends on well-functioning ecosystems and that biodiverse regions can better support food production, healthy soil and air quality, and can foster healthy connections between humans and wildlife. And whereas cities, towns, and counties have a critical role to play to help save the monarch butterfly, and the town of Carrboro wants to participate in this effort. And whereas as mayor, I signed the 2021 National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge, and our town has officially committed to taking meaningful action to protect the monarch butterfly. And whereas residents of Carrboro can aid in this effort by planting native milkweed and nectar plants to provide habitat for monarchs and other pollinators in suitable locations. And whereas efforts that the town of Carrboro has taken or will pursue toward this goal include launching a public communication effort, hosting a native seed giveaway and neighborhood challenge, expanding the town invasive species program, displaying educational signage, planting native milkweed on town properties, updating the town code to allow for native plant habitat, adopting ordinances that support reducing light pollution, and exploring changing ordinances related to pesticide and herbicide use. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Lydia Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim October 2, 2021 as Mayor's Monarch Pledge Day in the town of Carrboro. I encourage all residents to learn about and celebrate monarch conservation. This is the 14th day of September, 2021. Laura, thank you for being here. As I kind of read that, I wasn't able to see you. Now I see the monarch behind you. Do you have any comments you want to make to the council after hearing the proclamation?
Sure, yeah, just really quickly, I would like to thank you, Mayor Lavelle and council. I think this initiative is really important, and I think it integrates seamlessly with our other initiatives with Bee City USA and with the Community Climate Action Plan. So I think I'm really excited to get to work on some of these, and some of these actions we're already doing, and it's just going to expand our reach with pollinators, and I'm really excited to get that done. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Laura. And y'all, when I got the solicitation about this, I first reached out to staff to see if they were willing to join in the effort, since they kind of do it all, and they were really happy to join in and have us join this. So I think that's really awesome. Laura, thank you. Thanks so much for being here, and appreciate your support. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Sammy, did you have a question for Laura?
No, just a quick point. Over the summer, there was news that glyphosate may be banned in the United States. And I know that it's a last resort in our integrated pest management program. And I just want to put it on the table that we might want to jump the gun before the federal government bans it, that we exclude it from last resort within our IPM policy. So I'm asking the manager to look into that and get back to the council about the possibility of banning glyphosate a year early than what the federal government will do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sammy. Richard, were you able to capture all that? Yeah, he's nodding his head. Yes.
Yes, I got it.
Okay, thank you. Because that's kind of a public works policy, and I don't know if I don't know who with Public Works is here tonight to kind of hear that. But Laura certainly has heard it as well and can pass it along. So, all right, very good. Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess Joe's gone now. So, okay. Moving on then, Kathy, moving on now, I guess, to announcement of upcoming meetings.
All right, between tonight and your meeting next Tuesday, the Affordable Housing Advisory Commission will meet September 15th at 7 o'clock. The Board of Adjustment will meet September 15th at 7 o'clock. The Transportation Advisory Board will meet September 16th at 7:30. And then y'all will meet again September 21st at 7 p.m.
Okay, let's see. I have a Visitors Bureau Board of Directors meeting tomorrow morning. And does anyone else have anything to add for the calendar that wasn't said? Let's see, Sammy.
Monday, the 20th, the Family Success Alliance will meet from 1 to 3 p.m. via Zoom. And the Climate Council canceled its meeting. It landed on Yom Kippur this year.
Okay. Thank you, Sammy. Barbara.
I know that a few of us participated with the Good Neighbor Initiative, and Saturday is the breakfast. I think it's 8 to 10, or is it 9 to 11 at Hargraves Community Center? Is it 9 to 11, Damon? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Barbara. All right. Anything else? Anyone else wants to mention? All right. Very good. All right, Kathy. Time now for public comment. Do we have some folks in the audience that are signed up to speak?
We do. We have 3 people that have asked to speak. The first is Makita Mayat. So just one moment, I'll bring her over. Okay, Makita, if you just unmute yourself, then we can.
Hi. Good evening, Makita. You have a soft 3 minutes to chat with us this evening. It's good to see you.
Right. Respected members, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Respected members of the town of Carrboro Town Council, I'm happy and grateful to be with you this evening. I'm a long-time resident from inception of the landings at Winmoors located in Carrboro, and I was appointed to the Board of Managers of the Community Home Trust Landings LLC in November of 2020. There's a great concern with the way Community Home Trust works with residents to manage the landings, creating an environment of distress, discrimination, disenfranchisement, and exclusion. Examples are that the CHT Landings LLC operation agreement is not adhered to. The Board of Managers is excluded from the website, and residents have suffered a loss of community space to accommodate the site manager, which in my view is an injustice. Also, there is discord, disrespect, and distrust with the current operational structure at the landings and no option for a non-biased stakeholder. There's an overlapping structure where the CHT staff plans, organizes, and facilitates the tenant advisory committee where some residents feel that the TAC can't represent the true voices of the residents with the owner's bias present and obligation to CHT. There's disharmony in this community with residents involved in taking sides, and some are in fear of retaliation from CHT. Some are unhappy with the lack of sufficient maintenance and maintenance staffing. In lieu of us trying to express dissatisfaction and ineffectiveness with the processes, Community Home Trust keeps obstructing resolutions by putting up roadblocks. We request that you lovely people from the town of Carrboro, elected town council, review the processes of inclusion, procedures, practices, and policies of Community Home Trust, especially with resident engagement, treatment, tenant satisfaction, equality, and decision-making. Give thanks for allowing this platform for voices to be heard and listened to, and your consideration to aid this place, the landings at Winmore, that a lot of us consider home.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Makita. We appreciate your comments. When we usually hear matters like this, this is our first meeting here with new Mr. Manager White. We usually take what you have said and speak to our manager and have him do some type of an investigation and come back to us with a report for us to then review or comment on. Council members, does that seem like the right way to go with this? Does anyone have any? I see Jackie's hands up.
No, I was just saying, yes, that seems
Okay.
a good way to go.
Okay. And I see Barbara's hand up and then Randy's hand up. Do y'all want to say a few words?
Yeah, just real briefly, I just want to thank Ms. Makita for coming in and voicing her concerns. I am the Community Home Trust liaison, and you know, she has reached out to the CHT board mainly through email, but has not been allowed, and I can say this because I've been in the meetings, has not been allowed to come in like she is with us to give public comment. And the explanation has been that CHT is a nonprofit and that they don't operate the way that we do as an elected body. Okay. And so Ms. Makita is just seeking to be heard, you know, with the issues that she's bringing forth. So I did just want to weigh in some.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Barbara. Thank you for that. Let's see, Randy.
Yeah, Makita, I want to thank you and you know, and residents for being willing to step up and share with us your concerns. I agree with Mayor Lavelle that the best steps moving forward is to share the concerns with the manager. It's documented now, and have the manager and staff report back to us. I want to tell you, not only do I appreciate you coming forth and how hard I know that is, because Community Home Trust is a much respected organization in the community, and so it's not easy to stand against an entity with such a strong background of having done such good in the community. But in addition to that, you know that, you know, going forward as things unfold, that we're here and that you can continue to come regardless of you know, what we are able or not able to achieve. So, you know, thank you. And, you know, and I appreciate you being here.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, Randy. Let's see, Jackie and then Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Makita, for coming tonight. I know it takes a lot sometimes to come to a public meeting and voice your concerns. And so thank you for your courage in doing that. I really appreciate it. Yes, they are a nonprofit, but they're kind of and which this surprises me that would have been the response you got, Barb. I believe you. They are a nonprofit, but they're kind of like a hybrid between a nonprofit and a WASA, in that they were started by, and I was there when they started, by Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Orange County, with representation from the university. So they're kind of different than your normal run-of-the-mill nonprofit. They are really an instrument of the local government. And so as an instrument of the local government, I think we can push back and say, people have a right to come speak to you. I find that experience very disturbing, and that they would kind of brush you off, Barb, by saying that they're a nonprofit, really, because nonprofits don't even all operate that way. So I hope we can get, the only way you fix things is through dialogue, through like really listening and really searching for common ground. And I'm disappointed that they don't seem to be willing to do that. So Barb, thanks for your representation there. And thank you, Ms. Makita, for bringing problems to our attention.
Thanks, Jackie. And let's see, Susan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you. I just want to echo what everybody else is saying, Ms. Makita. I really appreciate you being here this evening, and I really appreciate you sharing those comments and sharing your concerns with us. I just wanted to let you know I'm a neighbor. I live right down the street from you on East Windmore. And so I will, like everybody else, I respect this process, and I support the process, but also know that we're standing by, ready to listen, ready to help in any way we can, in this case as a council member, but also as a neighbor. So I hope we will be able to stay in touch. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Susan.
I'm sorry, Mayor Lavelle. Let me just tell the other side. It's just really brief. So a process was developed. Okay, let me just say that a process was developed by the operations side of CHT for folks to be able to come in and speak. Although Ms. Makita still has yet to be able to speak to the CHT board like she is tonight. And I know that we do fund CHT, as does Orange County and Chapel Hill. And I'm just want Mr. White to just take all this into account. Would also encourage him to reach out to the ED over there. But I mean, for me, she was never able to come before the CHT board to speak, although a process has now been developed. It was just a lot. I feel like it was just a lot of energy that went into not allowing her to speak. And that's just from my seat on the CHT board. Thanks.
Thanks, Barbara. And so, Mr. Manager, we'll get a kind of a detailed report and have staff do a little investigation on this. I'll also just comment and say that, and this is more for maybe Richard's, kind of education as anyone else's. Community Home Trust for many years dealt with home ownership, and this is one of the first. The Landings is a more recent acquisition over the last couple of years of managing a rental affordable housing community, and so. Some of this is also might be some new paths they're kind of following too, and just new procedures they're setting up. And so there's that, I think, complexity around this as well. So anyway, we look forward to hearing back from you, Mr. Manager. Again, Nikita, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And Kathy, if this comes back to us on another agenda, we can keep her in the loop as to when that is. Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. All right. Moving on then. Other members of the audience to be with us.
We do. Shelley Welch would be next.
Shelley, yeah, there we go. We can see you and presumably hear you now. I know you emailed some things to Kathy. Kathy, do you have what Shelley emailed?
I do. Do you want me to bring that up now or when Kevin is
whatever she says. So
yeah, so if you can bring up the photographs, the PDF of the political signs, that's the one I would like to address first, and Kevin's going to address the other issues.
Okay, so as soon as Kathy gets this up, we'll go ahead and begin. And you all,
I can start talking before then.
Okay.
Several weeks ago, maybe a month, we emailed the town planner, Marty, Patricia, the attorneys, pretty much all of you guys, and complained about some political signs on 870 Smith Level Road and 3200 Damascus Church Road. You can see them right here. These signs have been in place since, I don't know, maybe April. Your LUO states in section 15-273A5 that political signs shall be removed within 3 days following the election or conclusion of the campaign. If you can go to the next one, Kathy. Well, I just want you to see the first picture at the top is Trump signs at 870. There's also a picture in that photo of a business sign for Merritt Gravel Pit on a residential property. That is not mine property. That is quite far from mine property, actually. There's another house in between this property and Merritt Gravel Pit. The next picture you see, September 14th, that was taken this morning. There are 3 signs here. The one at the very top was for the benefit of my preschool. As you might imagine, it would be quite difficult to climb up, I would say, a 40-foot, what is that?
30-foot crane.
Crane to place a Trump flag up there. It's kind of gotten torn down. They've replaced it once just so we can be sure not to miss it. The other one is hanging from the top roof. And the third one is plastered on the front of the second floor. You notice that there are no political signs that would cut below the 10-foot wall we built between us and our neighbor. You can go to the next picture. So that's basically what my clients, parents of preschool children and kindergarten children, see when they pull into my business. And as you all know, you approved this structure as a residence and a business, which also is a violation of your LUO, as your LUO states that you cannot have a business in a residence if that business creates a noise issue, a dust issue. There is a whole list of stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with it since you probably know the LUO so well. These signs must be removed within 3 days after an election. They have been there for months. I have complained for months, and you have not even responded. Not only have you not responded to my emails, you have not requested that they take them down. They have replaced them when they get old and worn, and they will continue to do that unless you enforce your land use ordinance. Is that the last one?
There's another. There might be another.
Please go down if there's another.
And you're a little over your time, but go ahead and finish up.
There's the crane. It just begs to ask, how much work did it actually require to climb up there just to be a jerk? Our expectation is that you will enforce the LUO. Right in the front of their property is that Trump 2020 pro-life, God bless America sign. He is more than welcome to believe that all he wants. He is not more than welcome to keep it up 3 days past an election, unless you guys want to go on retreat and change your LUO. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Shelley. Before we get to you, Kevin, I see that Barbara has her hand up, and then when we wrap up everything, we'll kind of get to Richard with next steps. But go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Shelley, for coming in and letting us know. So I guess my question is, what happens if, is this on a private property?
So I don't, yeah.
And what is that?
This is on commercial property and residential property. You guys have decided that is both a residence and a business.
Oh yeah, because you said that earlier. Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah, but your LUO does not address whether this is applicable to commercial or residential. It simply states.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get around to. So it needs some clarification.
Yeah, but I've emailed all of this information to all of you. Everyone listening to me speak tonight has already had this information multiple times.
And you haven't received a response from any staff, Shelley?
Not one.
All right. So one matter is,
thank you, Shelley.
Mr. Manager, Mr. White, Richard, is a response, if we could get it around this particular question around the political signs. I don't necessarily want to put Brady on the spot right now, but I think that's something that if we could get a response back to that soon, that would be helpful. So thank you. So now we're moving on to Kevin. Kevin, you feel free to start whenever you want.
Okay, so I do have a separate set of, there we go. Thank you, Catherine. And also welcome to Mr. White. It's always great to have fresh faces. Welcome back again. So here, this continues another complaint on the Merritt gravel pit. We have emailed you guys on this disturbance in the area outlined in red, as you see there. That's what it looked like July 17th. You guys had settlement agreements with the Merritts that they're not to disturb that area, which has been released from the DEQ mining area back to the jurisdiction of the town of Carrboro. So what you see in red there is the outlined area of the non-permitted area, which is under the jurisdiction of town of Carrboro. So if we go back to the next slide, we sent you guys an email immediately when this started happening. He began to excavate in the red area, which is the town of Carrboro's jurisdiction. This is an area in which was released from the DEQ back in, 1998. He excavated it. You guys went through a whole rigmarole of a complaint. Superior Court, you actually went to the Board of Adjustments. They voted unanimously that your planning board, your planning division was correct in their assessment of excavation in a watershed and in your jurisdiction, and filed a lawsuit. And we sent this email to everyone that is listening to my voice on the town council, the Marty and the town planning, and also to your attorneys, to which Nick Herman responded and said, wow, you know what, Marty, this appears to be in the area of the Merritt's property over in which we do not have jurisdiction. Your thoughts? Well, I'm really shocked. I'm shocked at the fact that he even said this, because he spent 1.5 years litigating this. What is he pretending not to know and being ignorant about? Are you kidding me? It's obvious. You guys have been through this before. And Mr. White, we are looking forward to meeting you and giving you all the details of what we're discussing here. So this is what needs to be addressed, because you're not saying a word about it. You're pretending not to know. You haven't even responded. What is going on? What are you going to do about this excavation in a watershed? Town Council, Damon, running for mayor. Please answer.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. So this information you presented to us, these last couple of slides, shows some of what's happened here over the last, it looks like 3 to 4 weeks. Richard started about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So I don't want to put him or Brady on the spot about this, but I think I speak for the rest of the council when I say we'd like for you all to, we'd like for our manager to kind of to look into it and get some kind of response back, if possible, to us soon. I see Barbara's hand up. Barbara, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I do actually. And so Kevin, right? So thank you for coming in and commenting. And so, we've been doing this for a while, right? So it really is about time for us to say what we can and will do as a town and a council. Shelley and Kevin have been coming in, for a while. And I realize, Mr. White, he's new and he's being brought up to speed, but we need to come forward with that, and a good timeline. Because this is just, it's ongoing, and they really don't feel listened to. I feel crazy over here, when they come in and they're talking, and I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, okay, so but tonight, we need to get really clear with Shelley and Kevin. I think the rest of us feel the same way. And Mr. White is here, and I believe that he will get up to speed on the information. And hopefully, we'll be able to come to a good resolution, because I know Shelley and Kevin are tired, and we gotta ante up.
It's ironic in the face of this monarch butterfly proclamation. It's just, I don't have words for it.
To hear you talk about how you value the environment when you entered into a settlement agreement after spending taxpayer money on a Superior Court lawsuit, and a settlement agreement that you never enforced. He's never planted one seed in that area. It is dirt. You don't care. You do not care about the environment, except as it makes you look really crunchy granola and organic and awesome. But on the ground, feet's on the ground, you don't care, because we listen to your behavior and we ignore your words. And that's what we hear.
Well, again, I'd really just like to say I'd like for Richard to get the entire picture on everything that's gone over all through the years, and also particularly over the last year and this summer, some of what you have referred to, and then get it on this most recent information that we've gotten from this summer in responding and kind of getting back with you, talking with Nick, who's not here, talking with staff who aren't here, and then keeping us in the loop on what he can find out and what we jurisdictionally and legally can do going forward. So we appreciate you both being here again, and we will try to get information back to you as soon as we can. So
thank you.
Thank you all. All right. All right, Mr. Manager, it is time now for us to go to our consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. The first item on the consent agenda is the approval of minutes from June 15th and June 22nd, 2021. And I want to point out that there will be amendments from Mayor Lavelle, Mayor Pro Tem Fushi, Councilmember Slade and Romaine on the June 15th minutes, and the June 22nd minutes will be tabled for approval until September 21st.
Let's go ahead and are you going to run through the rest of them?
Yes, I'll keep going. Okay. Item number 2 is a request to adopt the resolution to award a service sidearm to a retired police lieutenant. The police lieutenant is Landis Kennedy, who retired from the town on August 1st after 20 years of service and over 40 years of total law enforcement service. And the police department would like to award Lieutenant Kennedy his service sidearm to recognize dedication to duty and his service to the town of Carrboro. And the town council's request to adopt the resolution, and town staff recommends that the award be provided to Lieutenant Kennedy. Item number 3 is conditional use permit extension request by Lloyd Farm, Phase 1 at 700 and 706 Old Fayetteville Road. The town council was asked to review a request for an extension of date when the conditional use permit would otherwise expire for Lloyd Farm Phase 1. The CUP permit expires on October 22nd of this year, and town staff recommends approval of the request. Item number 4 is the adoption of a town code amendment to add 2 seats to the Stormwater Advisory Commission. Item number 5 is a resolution to consider a parking lease agreement with Fitch Lumber. This is to lease a parcel of property at 502B North Greensboro Street for parking during the construction of the 203 project. Item number 6 is this will be quarterly reports for 2021 for quarters 1 and 2 for the town of Carrboro CDBG-CV grant number 25-V-3525. And this item is to provide an update on the town of Carrboro's Community Development Block Grant from the North Carolina Department of Commerce. Item 7 is the Powell Bill Special Revenue Fund Ordinance. And this is to move accounting for the Powell Bill funds from the general fund to a special revenue fund. Item number 8 is a request to authorize the town manager to execute a memorandum of agreement to accept transportation demand management grant funds for FY 21-22. And this would be for the MOU for the FY 21-22 grant program. That's all the items under the consent agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Manager. All right, what do we want to pull? Jackie, you want to pull something?
Yes, I'd like to pull 3 and 7.
Okay, any other ones to pull, Barbara?
4.
And Sammy?
5 and 8.
Pardon me?
Number 5 and number 8.
5, number 8. Okay, all right. So can we have a motion for number 1, only the minutes from the 15th, and for number 2 and 6?
I'll move it.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Jackie. All in favor say aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Me, aye. Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
And everyone jumped around. Jackie, are you the last one? Did I call you yet?
Yeah, aye.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so the first one that we had a question about then was number 3. That was about, go ahead, Lloyd Farm. Yeah.
I know that people frequently ask for extensions on the CUP. This one, I'm kind of wondering what's behind it. I know that commercial real estate market is changing, that it's been heavily impacted by the pandemic. And some of the things that they were planning on including there, I'm wondering if they are looking to change what they've been permitted for. If they're looking to change, and I know that on the surface the answer is no, that it's simply an extension of their current conditional use permit. But I am wondering if at some point soon they may be returning, asking for some changes, because if you look at what's included in it, maybe those things aren't as, maybe they're feeling like they need to make some changes, and that's one reason they're asking for an extension. I think another reason they're asking for an extension is the cost of construction's gone up a lot, and maybe they're waiting on that. I'd like to know the whole story behind what's going on. It raised questions for me rather than giving answers.
Yeah. Well, I know nothing more than you know, because I got the. I don't know if John Hartman Brown has any additional information, Kathy, if Trish does. As you pointed out, I mean, we've seen this on a lot of our commercial properties over the last couple of years where they ask for the extension. It seems like, the reasons they give, you know, a lot of credence to the COVID pandemic, you know, and the permitting agencies and delays there, and that the permits won't be in place in time for next year, and they're just worried about meeting that deadline. That, at least that's what I read, you know.
So since this is phase one, will this be pushing out the other phases as well? Or are we going to see them coming and asking for, you know, is this pushing out the other phases of the project as well? I would presume that it is.
Good question. You know, I mean, it refers to phase one of the conditional use permit. Kathy, I don't know if Trish or anyone else with planning, or if John has any more information.
Do you want me to bring someone over?
Yeah, if there's someone, maybe Marty.
Marty had his hand up on the waiting.
I know that not everybody thinks in the same way I do. I tend to trust my intuition, which tends to be based on years of experience seeing things unfold. And this to me just says it opens the door for asking for some changes, particularly in the later projects. I just feel like I don't have a whole picture.
Let's see if Marty has any insight for us. Hey, Marty.
Hey, good to see everyone. I'll try to be succinct in my response and then answer any additional questions. I think the short version of this, they weren't, and James is here too. If I missed something, he can jump in. But they weren't feeling secure about meeting the deadline, the October deadline. But we are right now actively reviewing the construction plans. And so they are, you know, the pandemic did slow everything down. Their closing on the property itself was delayed by that. So they did get slowed down in general, like a lot of other commercial businesses and entities did. But we are actively reviewing the construction plans right now. And as we are reviewing them, nothing has changed. They're not requesting any changes. I can't promise that they won't. But right now, unless James corrects me, I think all elements of what was current or previously approved are present in the current plans. As for later phases, this being the approval of, you know, what's been called phase one, the rezoning is in place for all phases, the whole of the property, but they have not even yet sought the CUP for the later phases. So there is no deadline. There's no permit in hand yet for the subsequent phases. James, do you need to add anything to what I've said, or is that?
No, I would just like to add that the consulting engineer has provided 2 sets of construction plans, and they are in essence down to some minor, you know, things to address with our town engineer, but they are in turn going to make a third submittal, and I think for the most part that will address all comments from most reviewing agencies. So then from there we will have a pre-construction meeting, and the actual construction plans will be approved starting then.
And in the pre-construction meeting, that's where we lay out all of the good neighbor policies and we make sure things are tight and in place. Because of the nature of this project and the impact of this project, I would really like the board to be kept informed of that as the you know, construction plans are finalized. I just think it's a good thing for us to keep our eyes on, considering the impact of this project. So I'm formally requesting that we be kept apprised of that before it's signed off on. Richard, do you hear me? Thank you.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, James. Good to see you both. Appreciate your comments. So,
Jackie's tough tonight. She a rough rider.
Okay. So Jackie, that answered your question. Can we have a motion then to approve number 3 by Barbara, second by Susan? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Jackie?
Reluctantly, aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
All right, very good. All right, the next one was number 4. That's about the town code amendment to add the 2 seats. Was that you, Barbara?
Yes, Mayor LaBelle, it was. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
And so I'm not against adding the 2 seats. I was looking at the language on the back. So you have number 1 that says 7 residents of the town of Carrboro. Number 2, 1 resident of the town's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction of the town, and then 1 person who need not be a resident of the town of Carrboro, but who must possess special expertise related to stormwater management. So it's the end of that sentence that gives me pause. Why must they? I'm not saying it wouldn't be good if whomever did, but why must they possess it? Because I think we already have expertise on the Stormwater Advisory Commission. And so I just want to make sure that there's adequate access for our community members without looking at it and saying, oh, well, I might would serve, but I don't have any expertise, but I'm interested in stormwater. I want to serve. And we all know that our exceptions are diversity and a lack of qualified applicants. And so I just feel like this expertise, special expertise is being entered back in. So I don't know if that's something legally that it has to be that way or just why, that is the case. And that's what I was looking for a response on. I see Jackie.
And one question I guess I'd have, and I'll go to Jackie, is if there already is, and I can't remember the makeup of the stormwater advisory group, but if there already is an expert, can that person slip into that seat if someone else joins who's not in that seat? I mean, I don't know. But anyway, let's go to Jackie and then on to others who, Jackie.
I think the way that I was reading this, and I'm pulling it up again, is 1 member who need not be a resident. So everybody else has to be a resident. And the way I was reading this was, if there's somebody who's not a resident, either in the town proper or the extraterritorial district,
well,
who had expertise that we felt like we needed, that would be the exception for the residential requirement. That's the way I read it.
Yeah, well, the way I read it, so it has 7 residents of the town of Carrboro, and then 1 resident of the ETJ or the town, and then 1 member who need not be a resident, so they could be or not, either way, but who must possess special expertise related to stormwater management. So to me, it seems like 8 of the 9 could be regular non-experts. 1 of them could be an ETJ or not, but then 1 is supposed to have special expertise. That's the way I kind of read it.
Yeah.
Kathy?
So if we found somebody who, I mean, we really need experts on this as well as citizens. And if we found somebody who was like, hey, I'm willing to help, but I live in Hillsborough kind of thing. I think that's why it was formulated that way.
Do we not have expertise currently, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, we do have expertise currently.
All right, let's go. Let's raise our hands so I can kind of, see who's talking or whatever. Let's go to Kathy. That's all right. I'm just trying. It's just a big screen here. So let me go to Kathy, and then I see Randy's hands up.
I'm trying to confirm by pulling up the town code, but I think the only change we're making is going from 7 regular seats to from 7 seats total to 9. I think the expert seat and the ETJ member were already there. So the only change that this is actually bringing forth would be from
5 to 7.
Number 1 would have said 5, and now
Okay.
it's changed to 7.
Okay.
And number 2 and number 3 were already there, and I'm trying to pull up the existing town code. I went to the stormwater section, and it's not there. So just
all right. So it sounds like what Kathy's saying is that this is how it was before, but that 5 residents was changed to 7 residents. And so while Kathy continues to look, I see
that's
Randy's
correct.
hands.
It is. That's the only change is 5 to 7.
Okay. So this is something I guess Barbara and others a few years ago when we created this group, we must have had that expert position of being one of the seats. Let's go to Randy, and then I'll go back around to whoever wants to comment. Randy, can't hear you.
Thank you, Kathy, because that's what I was going to say. I was the initial liaison, and John Cox's seat is that seat of somebody who brings the particular expertise in engineering because of his work in Durham. It just so happens that John is a resident of Carrboro, but when cycles shift, and somebody with that expertise rolls off, this ensures that someone with that engineering background is there to work with the entire group, so the entire group understands the engineering behind a lot of the discussion. And I'm really glad it's going to bump up from 7 to 9, because I think that there's great interest throughout the town between flooding and stormwater issues, and because we now have the utility.
Yes.
So this is a good move.
Thanks, Randy. That's helpful. So we'll go back to Barbara.
Yeah, and so Kathy, thank you for that clarification. And it is an important commission, and all of our community members are important. And for me, it's about them having access to serve if they choose to, without looking and saying, oh, well, I'm not an expert. And I think everybody understands what I'm saying. And so that's the space that I was coming from. It's not that I don't support it. I just don't want there to be any type of barriers, either with language requirements or whatever, where folks just would look at it and not feel like they could serve. We have enough issues, trying to get diversity and stuff on commissions. So didn't want to add to it, but I'm fine with it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Barbara, for bringing this up. All right. Any other further conversation about this item? And if not, can I have a motion? Let's see. Damon, are you making a motion?
Approval of the item.
Motion by Damon, second by Barbara. All in favor say aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Damon?
Aye.
But I got so much in my head, y'all. It's just a lot. I'm managing a lot here. Okay. All right. Next one, the parking lease agreement. Who brought that up?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I asked for more information about where we are on making up for lost parking at the 203. I was wondering if that information is available, and two, I think whether it's available or not, I think it would be good practice to, unless there's some reason this is urgent, that we postpone approvals to give the public time to look at that information.
So I don't know if other council members would like to comment on this, or if John would like to come over. I think, my memory of our direction to John was to go ahead and start seeing where we could lease some spaces, because we're going to be needing some spaces when we start construction. This looks like it's 19 spaces. And so I think that's where I thought he was coming from with this. John, are you here? Are you able to hear us? Hi.
Yeah, I can hear you, Mayor.
Yeah. So you heard Sammy's question?
Yeah, essentially that was our understanding, at least from a staff perspective from council, was there was a directive to find replacement parking to make up for, at least temporarily, for the loss of parking as a result of the 203 construction. And Mayor, you are correct. That's essentially where this is coming from.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not questioning that. I'm grateful for your work on it, John. My question is, where are we on that goal? So that when you bring forward these leases, we have a sense of how close we are to the goal. And we've already approved, before going into the summer break, we approved the one for the Cat's Cradle. And preceding that, we renewed the 300 East Main. So all that represents a significant chunk of parking. And my question is, where are we in meeting the need to make up for the displaced parking when construction happens at the 203?
Sure. So the spaces that we received from 300 East Main, forgive me for not having that document up right now, I believe was 62 spaces.
That's correct.
This will constitute 9 19 additional spaces. And then the additional Fitch lot that's going to be across the street, kind of the second portion of this, will constitute about 55 spaces. The caveat or thing to keep in mind here is that these spaces, this space will be available 24/7. These 19 spaces will. The section behind 300 East Main, portions of that will not be available because it will be used for, we're working with, of course, Frank and Cat's Cradle to help them provide additional parking. So it will be public parking during the daytime and into the evening on some evenings, but not available during those evenings that Cat's Cradle has an event. In which case, the additional 55 spaces from Fitch Lumber will be available during evening hours and late afternoon time, but will not be available earlier in the day. So we're trying to balance not only the amount of parking available, but also time sensitivity, time of day, to make sure that we can adequately accommodate the loss of that 24-hour parking.
Thank you for that information. John, along with that, we've renewed the lease at 300 East Main, I'm not talking about the Cat's Cradle. Of that parking, how much parking is there? And because when we approve it, the reasoning given by the council was that we wanted to make sure there was parking during construction of the 203. So what is the number for adding to what you just described? Yeah.
Let me can I just chime in real quick here, Sammy? And I want to also ask Mr. Manager and/or John if we're going to get a presentation soon in the next couple of weeks, if not on parking. This is getting a little bit deeper than just this item, but we can go further with it if you want. In my view, and then I might be wrong, but we've had the one at the Hampton Inn for many years. This search by John is to replace the 100 that we're going to lose for 203. And so in my view, they're kind of separate. That what we have at the Hampton Inn is different than these 100 spaces that John is looking for. And I see some nods. I don't know if anyone feels any differently about that. And I see some hands up too once Sammy's done. But I just wanted to chime in with my understanding of that.
Sure. I'm just a little confused because when we did renew that lease agreement, the reasoning given by many on this council was that it was because the justification given was it was because the 203 would be built. The original reason for why we went into that lease agreement was in large part economic development. The developers couldn't justify building such a large parking lot without the demand for it, and so the town picked up. And since then, it's kind of been mission creep. So I'm not quite understanding how it is that it's not considered as part of the parking that is making up for what's going to be displaced at the 203, given what the original reason was for that parking, and since then the reasons given by this council for why we are continuing with that lease.
Yeah, I haven't heard everyone else on this council or others on this council say that they thought 203, that they thought the Hampton Inn would take over all the parking from 203. I might be wrong, but in my view, it was kind of two separate things. In fact, the Hampton Inn parking is going to go away sometime. As 203 could, as the East Main Street project continues to get built out. And I think that's also something that we're thinking about in terms of the timing of the construction of the 203 project. Let me, Sammy, if you want to talk for a little bit more, but also I'm interested in hearing what the other council members have to say.
Just to summarize, John, if you could forward an email what you described as what that tally is relative to what's being displaced. And going forward, include that number and what's represented. I think this is important information for us to be transparent with the public as to why we're doing these leases. And if our goal is to make up for the displacement of the 203, then we need to be showing how we're meeting that goal and what the numbers are and how we're thinking. So that's the essence of what I'm asking for. What I'm describing about the Hampton Inn parking is part of the, if we don't lay that out, it's kind of hard to understand where we're going or what we have.
Thanks, Sammy. And also, I appreciate the questions and also just kind of John's thoughtfulness around the availability of this parking that we are getting. That's displacing 100 spaces that are kind of available 24/7 pretty much. So I know you're cobbling together some of this in your efforts. Let's go to Barbara and then Susan.
Thanks. And thank you, Sammy, for bringing us here as far as like the parking inventory and why we're doing what we're doing and do we need to do it. This is what I'm over here thinking about. And so my first question is, do we have to approve this tonight? And second is, did I hear you, Mayor Lavelle, say there was going to be a parking summary here in the next week or two that may answer some of, well, not only Sammy's question, but probably all of us, as far as inventory, maybe, and what we're trying to, like, all in one place, all in one conversation.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the next presentation from John to us will be about parking, but I do know that some of us have been asked to speak with the parking folks in town. I know there's counts going on right now, so I'm assuming at some part in the next point in the next month, maybe, or whatever, John, correct me if I'm wrong, or Richard, that there's going to be some kind of report back to us about what you're doing right now. So
yeah, so we don't have to approve this tonight necessarily, or what?
That's a question for John and Richard.
John Dewey.
It's not, I mean, it's not necessarily required. We are trying to get as much of this parking in place before we kind of get going on the 203 so that we can have appropriate time to advertise it, put signage up, things like that. So that's kind of really the only constraint that we're looking at here, is making sure that we have enough lead time before 203 closes to make sure we get the final improvements made on the lots.
Okay, thank you.
And do you know, I'll get to Susan next. Do you know approximately what, like, will that begin in, I know the dates are empty, but the approval of it, I guess, means that then the manager could execute it at his discretion. Are we thinking probably like January or something like that? Or would it happen more immediately? Or do you know that, John?
This specific parking lot is actually ready to go right now. So improvements are pretty much already made there. The lot has been graded. The front bumpers, the concrete bumpers, have already been put in place by Fitch as a good faith effort on this project. So we're ready to go right now. The only thing we would need to add, as I mentioned previously, is just some additional signage. This is a little bit of a hard spot to see for those of you who may have driven by. There's some visibility issues there from the road. So we want to make sure we put up ample signage letting folks know that there is additional parking back there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. Let's see, you got Susan and then Damon.
Thank you, Lydia. John, first of all, thank you very much for sharing this inventory with us this evening. It's really helpful. And so I understand in terms of losing 100 parking places that are open 24/7. And then in your inventory, it looks like we actually have a net change of plus 54. But as you pointed out, some of those spaces are available during different times of the day. I'm not sure where we're heading tonight, if we're going to vote on this or not, but one bit of information that would help me is with the parking places, these places that you have added to our inventory, given all of these different shifts that they are open to the public, would we now have enough here to cover those 100 lost spaces 24/7 at the 203? Or do you need to continue to identify more spaces to add to the pool?
So I think at the rate we're at right now, again, some of these lots overlap, so it's hard to say, but generally I would say we are there if we get all these leases in place, or at least we'll be pretty close on providing enough parking to cover kind of that same 24-hour period at 100 spaces. So like I mentioned, we're pretty close. The bigger kind of caveat, of course, is the biggest shifts are the 62 spaces with 300 East Main and the 55 spaces there at the Fitch lot. Those are kind of be the big ones. Again, they're available on the weekends, both of them. So during weekends, we're going to have maximum parking availability. During some evenings, we'll have maximum parking availability. But during weekdays and week evenings, some of those may shift. And of course, Saturday evenings, if Cat's Cradle has a show there, they'll be utilizing those 62 spaces at 300 East Main.
Mhm. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, Susan. Damon.
Yeah, I appreciate Susan's questions helping clarify some important information. John, it's really helpful. And I do agree with Sammy that it would be helpful as we continue to get updates about this, that you kind of help us keep a tally by providing that information as part of the agenda packet. And it's good to hear that sounds like we're just about where we need to be with replacing those spaces for during the construction period. So that's a good measuring point on the measuring stick to know that we're at. With respect to the item that's actually on the agenda tonight, I think, the council did direct the staff to acquire these leased spaces. Is there some specific reason we wouldn't just go ahead and, this is what we asked for, what the council asked for. Is there some specific reason why we wouldn't go ahead and approve the work that they've done at our request?
Is that a motion, Damon?
I'd just like to move that we approve the item. Yeah.
I'll second.
Motion by Damon, second by Randy. Susan, your hand's still up. I think that's from earlier, right? And then Sammy has his hand up. Did you want to speak, Sammy?
Yes. Is it my turn? Okay. Yes. John, the other thing that I'd be interested in seeing is currently at the 203 parking lot. I know that at the Century Center, Rexon Park has parking that happens at the 203. And early on in this process, we talked about the opportunity of making sure employees, when the construction's happening, are not part of the demand of those 100 spaces. In other words, gaining some spaces by having employees park elsewhere and catch the bus in. So it could be at town commons. So when you include those numbers, I'd be interested in what those employee parking opportunities are for making up those numbers different than leasing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Cool. So the reason I'm not voting for this tonight is I would like for this kind of information to be available in advance so that we might have the opportunity that we have a public meeting. The public has an opportunity to communicate with us on how they think of how we're thinking of these numbers. And for that reason, I think, especially since it's not urgent, I don't think, I won't be voting for it tonight.
Okay, thanks, Sammy. All right, just a little reminder here, y'all. After this, we have 2 more items still on our consent agenda. So, and Randy, your hand's up. Is that from seconding earlier, or do you have something else to say?
No, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank John working during the summer to get this to such a close set of numbers that he thinks it's possible that we can meet the need for the 203 lot. I know that was not easy. I know it was, a set of moving pieces and overlapping schedules. So I just want to formally thank you, John, because I know that it's like a shell game, and I really appreciate the work that you did to bring this to us today.
Thanks, Randy. All right, so we have a motion and a second on this item. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Sammy?
Nay.
Barbara?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thanks, y'all. Okay, am I correct that we still have 7 and 8? Someone pulled 7 and someone pulled 8. Is that right? So 7's about the POW bill. Is that you, Jackie?
Yes. Could I please share my screen? I think it lets me.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Shoot, hold on. I'm sorry. I had it pulled up. There we go. I know this was just a perfunctory kind of thing to have on, on the agenda because we're looking to move the funds to the special revenue fund for accounting. And that also allows us when there is carryover at the end of the year. I know that we have traditionally used some money for resurfacing of the streets, and that's what it's purposely for. And that Carrboro has historically done that. But if you look closely at this section, it says that it can be used for drainage, curb and gutter, for drainage. And yet here, POW funds shall be used only for resurfacing and other streets and other purposes. Those other purposes are included in here, including drainage. I would like us to seriously consider when there is money that we're moving to the general fund, or even for the POW bill in general, not even just end of the year funds, to seriously consider using that money for some of our drainage and gutter problems that our neighborhoods are experiencing. I know that we have the stormwater fund, which is slowly building up and still has more uses than it has funds. So I would like to ask the staff to please look. I know that we have some neighborhoods that, some just fixing some of the basically gutters in the neighborhoods and fixing some of the culverts in the neighborhoods would alleviate the problems that they're facing. So if we can use POW money for that, I'd like us to seriously consider, and I'd like to ask staff to come back with a report on how they've looked at that and how we could maybe add POW bill to some of our more pressing drainage problems that are going on in our neighborhoods. If I could get support for that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Mr. Manager, do you understand the request here about the use of the POW bill monies?
I do, yes, and yes.
Okay, and I think I expressed some ignorance at exactly how all those monies are currently used. Are they all used right now for repaving? Are they used in some part for curb and gutter? I don't know enough about that to even know if this would be something new or different or enhanced or whatever. So I think we'd like some information on that, Jackie, if that's what you're suggesting. And then, okay, I can't hear you.
And yes, I am suggesting that maybe moving some monies, because there are some places right now where drainage is more pressing of a need. Maybe prioritizing needs, but there's some places where drainage is more pressing of a need than resurfacing and actually flooding the streets. This is engineering from the perspective of a social worker, but I would think that streets constantly flooding would make us need to repave them more frequently.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see about moving that money.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Manager, we'd like to get that a report back from staff on that. Thank you.
I'll take care of it. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So
I had a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You may not have seen my hand. That's fine. So I'm not in, I don't disagree with what Jackie is proposing. I guess the information will come back from Mr. White, I guess, when staff has had a chance to look at it. But since not recently, a few years back, we established a stormwater utility enterprise fund. It's like a self-contained fund, right? Specifically for stormwater management to pay the staff and capital projects and things of that nature. And so, and then, our community members pay into that. So it's like, are we creating something separate, or are we talking about moving some of the POW funds into that? And are those, I guess those questions will be answered when the research is done, but that's what I was thinking about, because we do have a established fund. Like, how would we interject the extra money? Would it be sitting somewhere else to be used? Would we put it in? But the Stormwater Utility Enterprise Fund is already set up, and community members are actively paying into it. So I was just thinking about how that would work.
This is just adding to it, Barb, so we can do more quicker.
I know that, but is it that simple? Is what I'm getting at.
I think as a starting point, getting information back from Richard about this, from our staff and from Richard about this, I think could continue this conversation a little bit. I mean, I know the General Assembly is having a whole lot to say right now about stormwater management in general. So this may be informed by other legislation too, right, Kathy? So so I'd say we get the information back and then see, what we've been spending it on to begin with, and then what flexibility there may or may not be there. So thanks for raising that, Barbara. I appreciate it. All right, anyone want to make a motion then for number 7 as it is right now? Motion by Jackie, second by Barbara. All in favor say aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me? Aye. All right, last one then, the TDM grant. Who pulled that one?
I pulled it. I just wanted to request information from staff on, so we're a sub-recipient of this grant from the Triangle J Council, which gets the funds from, I believe, the MPO or one of those larger transportation sources of money. And I was curious to understand what amount Chapel Hill gets relative to the amount that Carrboro gets. I wanted to get a sense of proportionality and how far we're going with the TDM, if there's an opportunity to leverage the staffing that Chapel Hill has given the funds that they're getting. So specifically the question of how much funding does Chapel Hill get from Triangle J and how much do we get? Thank you, Mr. Manager. I'll move the item with that request.
So you want to we'll go ahead and move it, but you just want that information later, Sammy?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So motion by Sammy, second by Damon. All in favor say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Damon?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
And Jackie?
Aye.
All right, very good.
Lydia,
All right.
may I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Just hearkening back to road surfacing, I want to give.
You're cut. You muted yourself, Randy.
No, sorry. I want to give a shout out to council and to Public Works for taking care of Roberts Road. They are so happy. I watched them roll out the road. It looks beautiful. And I just wanted to get that in there because sometimes we don't think about how important road surfacing is to neighbors, and they are very happy. So thank you all for the work.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Randy. Thank you for recognizing that. Okay, so we're on to other matters now, Mr. Manager.
Okay, the next item on other matters is the first item is a presentation of the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Alternative Analysis. And this item is for the Town Council to receive a presentation on development of the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan with a focus on the alternative analysis. And Andy Henry, who is the Senior Transportation Planner with the Durham, Chapel Hill, Carrboro Metropolitan Planning Organization, is here to make the presentation.
And Zach, I know you're going to come over too, so if you could raise your hand. We've got several of you logged in under the same account. Thank you.
So good evening, Andy. It's good to have you here with us tonight.
Hello.
Damon and I get to see Andy once a month at the MPO meetings. And I think I heard Kathy say you're pulling someone else over.
Yes, Zach.
Zach, okay. All right, very good.
Our transportation planner.
But yeah, whoever wants to, I don't know if Zach's going to kick it off for Andy and or what. So. Are you with us, Zach?
Yeah, sorry about that. When they brought me over, and everything cut in and out.
Okay.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we see your screen. We see the display, and then along the left, we see all the slides. So. There we go.
Okay, Zach, am I good to go, or do you want to do an introduction?
I think we're all set. You can take it away.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name's Andy Henry again, and I'm a transportation planner for the Durham Chapel Hill Carrboro Metropolitan Planning Organization, DCHC MPO. And I'm going to give hopefully a short presentation tonight. And then, when I'm done, if you have a quick question, please ask during the presentation. But I'll take questions and comments at the end of the presentation. So let's move the slides forward. I'm going to talk tonight about our MPO, what we do, about the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, a little bit about some of the results we've gotten from our surveys of the constituents, and also about an alternatives analysis that has some scenarios for our future transportation plan. A little bit about demographics and land use. We'll go over a couple metrics, and then I'll talk about next steps. So next slide. So if you're not familiar with the Durham Chapel Carrboro MPO, on the left, that's the regional context. And of course, we're that purple area, that planning area. And if you look to the right, you'll see that there's a blow up there. And our planning area is all of Durham County, about half of Orange County, the urbanized areas of Orange County, and a northeast corner of Chatham County. And if you go back to the map on the left, you'll also see that given that regional context, we have a sister agency over at Raleigh and Raleigh-Wake County called the Capital Area MPO. And we do the plan together. This is a joint plan between the two MPOs. And one other thing, we have a board that makes the decisions for us. Town of Carrboro has a member and an alternate on the board. Council member Damon Siles is the member, and Mayor Lavelle is the alternate. They're both very active and very involved. So you have representation on the board. Next slide. I'm talking about the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MTP. And when you look at these concentric circles here, it's the second largest one. It's a little smaller than our comprehensive transportation plan, which has all of our future needs, has just lots of projects in there. We come down to the MTP because there's fewer projects, a little smaller a plan because we have fiscal constraint. We have to show that we have the revenue to cover all the cost. This also shows why it's important to have the MTP. That next concentric circle you see coming in, that's the prioritization process, and that's the gateway into getting funded. The projects are analyzed and given a grade, and if they make a certain level, they move into the TIP, which is that last circle. And the TIP, or the STIP, Transportation Improvement Program, that's where the projects get funded. So, and if you're not in the MTP, you can't go through the prioritization process, and you can't be in the TIP. So that's why the MTP is important. Next slide. The milestones for developing our MTP, we're at the middle one there, the alternatives analysis. We're moving real soon into the preferred option. That's where we have a draft plan, right? And we put a draft plan out, and then we come back in about December, we approve that plan. We send it back out with what's called air quality conformity, which basically shows that our plan, when you look at the transportation sector, that the emissions from the transportation sector will be beneath certain thresholds. So we probably won't adopt this plan until January, maybe February of 2022. Next slide. So I just want to, before we go into this, we've gotten lots of feedback on the survey we did last fall. These are some of the policies and themes that rose to the top when we did the survey. Biking and walking, you can see, is important in there. There's lots of support for transit service, coordinating land use and transportation, protecting the environment, supporting low-income and minority populations. Those are the themes that we've heard over and over again. We conducted another survey just recently, and the same themes rose to the top. So this is what we're hearing from the people that are responding to our surveys and providing comments. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about the alternatives analysis. Basically, the idea is to get the public, staff, our board discussing different projects and possibilities for the future. And when we go to our draft plan here in the next month or so, we're not going to just choose one of these options I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. We're going to choose different projects from all the different options. Next slide. So these are the three scenarios that we looked at. Each one builds on the other. We looked at plans and trends. I call it the business as usual because we're really taking the current land use policies and plans and taking them out to the year 2050. And we're using our current long-range transportation plan. And some of the projects, important projects you might be interested that are in there, that includes the North-South BRT and Chapel Hill and the commuter rail transit between Durham and Raleigh. The next step up is, I call We Can Do Better. It increases the intensity and mixes of the land use at the major employment hubs and travel corridors. We add more transit projects. There's a few more roadway projects in the shared leadership scenario. Some of the important projects in there are 1551 BRT, running a Fordham Boulevard between Chapel Hill and into Durham, and then a higher level of service for the commuter rail transit between Durham and Raleigh. And then the last one is all together. The land use is fairly similar, but we add even more transit. We try to do a better job at making sure that the minority low-income areas have higher levels of transit service. So that's kind of our gold standard, this all together. Some of the projects in there are we extend commuter rail out to Mebane. We have BRT and NC54, that's between Chapel Hill and RTP. And some high frequency bus service between Chapel Hill and Pittsboro, and Chapel Hill and Carrboro and Hillsboro. And also more funding for complete streets. Okay, next slide. I just want to talk about the land use real quick before we go. What you're looking at here is, this is the population density in the year 2050 on the left, in that kind of blue map. You can see that the population's spread out pretty well. I think you can see the corridor around Chapel Hill and Carrboro, the rural buffer there. It's pretty enclosed there in Chapel Hill, and Carrboro a little more concentrated in the downtown areas and near the university. If you look to the right, that's the employment density for the year 2050. It's along the major corridors, travel corridors a little bit more around the university, and then you can see the downtown Carrboro are kind of the employment densities. So you can go to our website. We have lots of these links will take you to maps that you can zoom in and zoom out and get a better look at some of these scenarios. Next slide. These are some of the metrics we're looking at. The first one here, we're comparing those three different scenarios with something we call the no build, E plus C, existing plus committed. And that just means we're taking the 2050 population employment, we're putting in the travel demand model, and we're keeping the transportation system static. And that's called the no build. We're comparing these three alternatives or three scenarios that I just talked about with those. And if you look at the graphic on the left, you can see the vehicle miles traveled is going up a little bit for the plans and trends shared leadership. It starts to come down a little bit. It's that blue bar, and it's starting to come down a little bit with the altogether. You can see that the vehicle hours traveled goes way down on all three alternatives. That's just because there's additional capacity on those roadways, and you're seeing less congestion. These, when you go and look at these metrics, there's not much movement between the vehicle miles traveled, vehicle hours traveled, the travel time, congestion, etc. However, they do move in the right direction as we move from plans to trends to shared leadership to all together. As we get the land use, more mixed land use to higher density, we get the more of the transit in the urban areas. They move in the right direction, and we see the VMT going down, but not by a whole lot. Next slide. I just want to talk about emissions real quick. In this table on the columns, you can see those are the different alternatives. And this shows the different rows show the different emissions. So you see carbon dioxide, nitrous oxides. On the far right, you see the percent change from the year 2016 to the estimated year in 2050. And all of those emissions are going down, actually, except for CO2, for carbon dioxide. So a lot of that, even though the VMT is climbing very fast at 75%, those emissions are going down. They go down because the vehicle fleets are getting more efficient, more miles per gallon. You have hybrid cars, you have some electric cars, and also the tailpipe. There's decline in tailpipe emissions as well. So those are going down, even though the VMT is going up. Next slide. This infographic has a lot of different measures on it. If you go across the top in the different rows, you'll see the three alternatives or three scenarios on the right. And then the first column is that no build that I talked about. And each of the different rows show you another measure. And so, for instance, in the first one, that's the auto commute time. We start 24 minutes is the average auto commute time. In the year 2050, when we have the no build, it goes down to 21 minutes in the altogether. It delays, the same thing. You go down the third line, the delay in our MPO as you move from left to right. They keep going down. It goes a little bit up in the last one altogether, but that's because we pulled out several highway projects and replaced them with, we pulled out several highway projects. Going down further, transit ridership is several rows down. Moving left to right again, the ridership on transit's increasing. So they do improve as we move through those different scenarios. The last row is funding. The funding, we can start with the plans and trends. The funding, you see the $3 signs. Well, in the shared leadership, you see $3 more signs. So you have the same level of funding, but in shared leadership, we're assuming there's some additional funding from, I think it was a commission called NC First, and they're making some recommendations on increasing transportation funding. And then in the last one, we have both of those, the original funding, the ones from the NC First Commission, and we're assuming some type of local source, probably equal to what we currently get with the transit tax that you have in Orange, Durham, and Wake County. So next slide. So you can see a lot of these metrics weren't moving a lot, and we have a model that covers the entire region. It covers a lot of suburban tract areas. So sometimes it's really hard to get the model numbers to move as we add projects and make changes. But if we look a little closer, we call this travel choice neighborhoods. And basically what we've done is we're looking at neighborhoods that have high levels of transit. And so in this case, when you move across the top, that shows on the different columns, that shows the percentage of that mode that is in each one of those scenarios. So the first line, you see all TAZs in the entire MPO. It says non-motorized, but that means bicycle walking, 5.4%. However, if you go down and you start looking in the areas where we have high frequency bus, or BRT and CRT, you can see that number more than doubling, up to about 12.2%. Same thing as you move across the different modes. Bus on the next line, it's only 6.4% through the entire MPO. But if you look at the areas that more urbanized where some of the investments are, you're getting a higher mode shift to the bus, up to 11.4%. Next slide. One thing that we keep in mind is that equity measures, and we've just started pulling data out for some of the equity measures that we have. But this slide is great. This tells a good story. This is from the Integrated Mobility Division from NCDOT. This is North Carolina. It says on average, community colors have low vehicle ownership rates, live further from work, are more likely to depend on public transportation, and are more likely to be involved in a crash as a pedestrian. So this is something we always keep in mind. We've done a few of our own equity measures. For instance, we've seen that if you look in our in the MPO area, when you look at safety, for instance, if you look at the number of serious injuries and fatalities for pedestrians and cyclists, they're higher in areas that have higher concentrations of minority and low income communities. So we've done some of our own, and we found some of the same results there. Next slide. There's lots of other metrics that we have. I invite you to go if you're interested in getting more details. There's different maps. We have isochrone maps that show that how far you can get, in 10, 15-minute increments from central areas. Kind of shows the commuter shed, the travel time between some of the major destinations, etc. Next slide. We've done quite a bit of public engagement. We're going to finish up pretty soon, tomorrow actually, for the alternatives analysis. However, we're taking comments, whether it's from a citizen or a board or whatever. We will take it all the way through January, February when we adopt the plan. As I said, we have the preferred option, our draft coming up. Again, we're going to have another 2-month public engagement period where citizens can provide us feedback. We've done a survey. There's lots of information on the webpage. We did some workshops online. I haven't done any pop-ups. The Delta variant kind of pushed that to the side. I'm going to see many local boards and commissions. We have 4 focus groups for communities of concern. We've had 2 of those already, and they've really been good. Very, very informative. We had a public hearing earlier this month at our board meeting, and then we have another meeting with. Well, I'll talk about that here in a minute. Next slide. I think I've covered all these points already, so let's go on to the next slide here. The next steps, we'll complete our public engagement and continue receiving feedback. There's a joint board meeting between our MPO board and the Capital Area MPO on September 29th. Again, this is a joint plan. We do it together. So it's a very good time for the boards to meet and discuss any issues that there might be. I want to make sure that I'm clear about one thing. When our board met just maybe 2 weeks ago now, they asked us to, or gave us really a directive to do 2 different preferred options. They wanted, one preferred option I might call the more traditional, where the we're following some of the funding, the restrictions on the funding that we have. We're following that. That option tends to have much higher investment in roadways than say transit, bicycle, pedestrian. Roadways sometimes are 2/3 of the investment. So that's kind of the traditional one. They've also asked us to do one that more closely follows the MPO's policies and priorities, as they relate to climate change, environmental impacts, racial equity, safety, health and human well-being. So we're doing another one. We're doing a second one. I'm calling that the vision plan at this time. That will take that pyramid I talked about earlier, where 2/3 of the investment is in roadways, and probably flip it around, and 2/3 or more of the investment will shift over to the non-highway investments. So, and then just the other thing I want to mention, we're making sure we coordinate the Durham-Orange County transit plans. So that's it. I've kind of run through this kind of a bit quick, I know, trying to be conscious of everyone's time, but it'd be great to hear some of your comments.
All right, great. Thank you, Andy, for that presentation. And I know at the end, you kind of talked a little about our MPO meeting a couple of weeks ago. I want to go ahead and hand it over here to Damon first. I know he wants to comment a little bit about that as well. So go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. Andy, thank you for the presentation. We, as you said, got this presentation at the MPO board meeting a couple of weeks ago. And I guess what I wanted to share, and I'll be pretty brief about it, is just what Andy referenced there toward the end of his presentation is when he made his presentation to the MPO board a couple weeks ago, it generated quite a bit of discussion. And I think it would be fair to say among a few of us on the board, a little bit of just, interest in seeing something more in these alternatives that we felt like would be better reflect the values of the MPO board around some of the things that Andy mentioned around, reflecting our interest in actually making an impact on on climate change and environmental impacts of our transportation projects. Things like, and Andy showed some really great information about the work that's been done in measuring racial disparities and outcomes around safety. So we did have a pretty, it was a really good discussion actually, and it led to a directive to the MPO staff to supplement this material you've seen today with some more information, and specifically directing the staff to develop basically another alternative, which would reflect the MPO's policy priorities around climate change, around environmental impacts, around, as Andy said, around racial equity and safety and so on, while recognizing that this is a 30-year or so time horizon on this document, and the first 5 to 10 years of that are already sort of baked into the statewide transportation improvement program, and so there's not as much flexibility in those early years, but that we can be more visionary in the outer years in thinking about what it means to have transportation alternatives, and that actually reflect our values as a region. So we're hoping to see some information about that, and as Andy and his team begin developing these alternative or these potential preferred options. I think from my perspective, one thing that I'm hoping we can achieve here is a little bit more delineation between these alternatives that we've seen. It feels, as I expressed to the MPO board a couple of weeks ago, it feels when I see these alternatives that while I know they differ and in some important ways, they don't seem to differ in really big ways that would allow people to, I think, make some really clear choices among them. And I hope that the information we'll receive back from MPO staff will be a little clearer. And as I'm glad Andy is calling it the visionary option or the visionary alternative, a little more clearly aligned with the priorities of the MPO and its member jurisdictions than what I feel the current alternatives are. So thanks again, Andy, and I'm happy to answer some questions from that perspective of the discussion that the MPO board had, in addition to any questions that you all have for Andy.
All right, great. Thank you, Damon. We'll go on to Susan and then Sammy.
Thank you. Let me begin. Andy, thank you so much for your presentation this evening. And I also want to say thank you to Damon and Lydia for your service on the MPO board. Andy, lots of numbers tonight. There was one number, I actually looked at the website before this evening's meeting, and there was a number that I saw there on the website that was not, I don't think it was included tonight, but it was a number that sort of stood out to me. And it was called the percent of commute trips driving alone. And even under the altogether, even when we have all of these investments in bicycling and pedestrian facilities and transit, the best case scenario, we still have 78% of folks driving alone, and that hardly budged from the deficiency in needs category. So it does seem like there is this really hard nut to crack, which is how do we get people to at least carpool, right? But I was just curious, your take on this number. What does this mean in terms of our ability to change behaviors in a dramatic way?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you remember that slide where I was showing the travel choice neighborhoods, the percentages changed for bus and bicycle and pedestrian. We were in a bit of a hurry tonight, so I didn't go over to the other column and had SOV. That's single occupied vehicle. It's driving alone. That didn't move that much. It only went down 3 or 4%. It needs to move down further. I think part of what we run into is we have a regional model that it's in a pretty large area, and so there's so much that's outside of the urban core, and there's going to be continued development out there as well. Even though we do show a lot of higher density development, more mixed use, in kind of the urban areas and along the major corridors, there's still outside the cities, a lot of or outside the towns, a lot of development that's at lower density. I think that kind of gets washed away. But even when you looked at the travel choice neighborhoods, which we are just focusing on those different corridors that have the high capacity transit or that have the commuter rail, we're still not seeing that much of a change there. So it's hard.
Lydia, if I could just jump in really quick here too, because this question that Susan has raised came up in our board meeting as well. I think one of the things, in addition to the factors that Andy identified as shaping the outcomes that we talked about, is that one of the features of all three of these alternatives we've seen is that they are still, even though they differ somewhat in their focus, they are still all largely driven by highway capacity expansion. So even if some of the alternatives are adding, for example, additional transit projects, all three of the alternatives are largely focused on expanding the capacity of highways. And so it's like you're sort of undermining your investments in transit by continuing to invest in a really large way in highways. So of course, you're not going to see a change in the outcomes on mode share because you're continuing to encourage modes that we're trying to discourage by doing these kind of investments. So in my mind, that's a really important feature and one that I hope that can be addressed in these sort of more visionary scenarios that we've asked the staff to develop.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's a good point. In the visionary plan that we're thinking, there wouldn't be any roadway capacity improvements unless the roadway was providing, say, a bus-only lane for transit. So that will the amount of roadway capacity improvements will be much lower. And Damon's right. There's baked into all three of those alternatives is quite a bit of roadway improvements, capacity improvements.
Mm-hmm. Andy, yes, one more really quick question. I know I've been monopolizing the time, and this is just a quick question, Andy. There's of course this sort of massive infrastructure bill in Congress right now, which hopefully will be approved in the next few months, and that would be in time for your final recommendations, I think, come out in January. So would there be a possibility that, to what extent can some of these recommendations be adjusted if in fact lots of additional federal funding is coming our way?
Yeah, we're using, I don't think we're going to make many adjustments based on that because we're using already a model from NCDOT that tells us how much state and federal funding we're going to have. So we would probably stick with that model. The thing we will do, and what we've done in the past, is, for instance, right now the way what it's called is Strategic Transportation Initiative (STI). The way the money is earmarked is a minimum of 90% has to go for roadways. And what we've done in the past and what we'll really do this time quite a bit with the vision plan is we're going to make some assumptions that that's going to change and that it's going to change soon. And that a lot more of that money can be flexed over the transit and bicycle and pedestrian projects. So we'll be making some assumptions that there's going to be some changes in transportation legislation. I mean, you have to, otherwise you end up with a plan that's 2/3, 3/4 investments are in roadways.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Andy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susan. Let's go to Sammy and then Jackie and then Randy.
So thanks for the presentation, Andy, and thank you, Lydia and Damon, for serving on these boards and providing this essential perspective representing Carrboro. It's really I can't imagine being in these meetings. I'm glad to hear, Damon, that there was some reaction to what the plan so far that was mostly presented tonight. And it's outrageous that, and at a time when it's code red, we're still going to be doing 16% CO2 emissions when we need to be. We have a global climate greenhouse gas carbon budget of 7 years, and so we talk about systemic racism, and what this represents is systemic death, and it's really hard to extricate ourselves from the way in which, as Andy described, 90% has to go to roads. It's just like we are, it's 5 to 10 years is already baked into the transportation plan. That's the window of change. It's very hopeless from my perspective. So I'm glad y'all are there and able to still speak and communicate and express and push for something a little more hopeful. I'm glad that Andy and staff are moving towards with this visionary or / emergency scenario alternative, breaking through with some of those assumptions. I wanted to point, a lot of this is oriented or driven by the way in which those maps show assumptions of what the build out will be in 50 years. Andy, you shared a map. And I think that we have an opportunity on the local level to really, and in large part why we have a comprehensive plan and we're undergoing that process, is to really take seriously how we can skew that map so that it starts informing the way that transportation planners are thinking about what is possible. So I very much encourage us as we continue with our comprehensive planning process to be thinking about that map that Andy shared with us tonight and thinking about how to change that 16% CO2 to 0 within the time frame the science and scientists are telling us it must happen if we're going to continue living on this planet. In our comments in the resolution, I'd like to make sure that we are supportive of this visionary and emergency alternative, and that in that process, an eye be kept very, very tightly on the goal and metric of reducing our carbon per what the science says. Town of Carrboro has a goal of 80% below 2010 levels by 2030. So I would hope that Carrboro could be making that recommendation as part of what the goal is for this visionary scenario that was mentioned tonight. Those are my comments. Thank you all for your work.
Great, thank you, Sammy. Okay, we'll go to Jackie and then Randy.
Thank everybody for the work you've put into this. I really appreciate it. I have a question though for Andy. And I know that we all get in silos when we're working. This to me says that we're planning on people. When you look at the continuation of single car occupancy, we're presuming that people are going to continue working in the same way that they are now. And yet the past year and a half has seen many, many people change where they work, from the office to the dining table. Now people are going back to work, but they're predicting that a large percentage of the workforce, particularly when you look at the workforce of the triangle, will continue working from home. I'm hearing from a lot of people in that I know, particularly people in their 30s and 40s who are working, that they're being told from their companies, you're staying home. We're not going to renew the lease on our office building. And we're certainly seeing that in our major cities. So when we're predicting the need in the future for transportation, the need for roads, the need for buses, are we looking at this new data that's emerging about the changing workforce, and that people may no longer be commuting to work the way that they are now? And I know that hasn't been a standard part of the matrix that's used to determine future transportation needs, but I think it should be, because it's a major shift that's happening in our work culture. Is that being discussed at all?
Yeah, it's been discussed. It is not in this plan, in this model, but we do these plans every 4 years. And so our travel demand model, they have I think it's called a household travel survey. And they do it every year, and they sample a certain number every year in the triangle. They take the results of that sample and they build that into the model. So if we're seeing changes in 2020 and in the years after that, 21 and 22, where more people are working from home, and I'm at home right now, I've been working from home since March 2020. If they see a big change and it continues, then that will be part of the model's behavior. But at this point, we've been working on this a couple of years. There hasn't been an opportunity to put that type of information, into this particular plan or the model.
I think it's going to create a shift, and it could even create an argument for putting less money into roadways. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay, let's go to Randy now.
Andy, Lydia, Damon, thank you for being willing to put up with, I'm sure, a very convoluted set of conversations and complex policies around the DCHC MPO. I applaud you. I really do. Andy, I want to take the flip side of Jackie's question, if I may, and just say that if you could show, and I'm looking at my set of slides, but if you could show the slide, it may be the slide prior to this next steps one. Go back one more. Okay, one back again. It may be, it's in the set that we have. What I'm looking for really has to do with the SOV models and the choice neighborhoods. So here's the question, and if I'm not posing, that slide you were just on is good. The next one with the red writing, yeah, okay. So here's my question. In a lot of the work that I've been doing the last few years, I do not see data that includes the high number of non-bricks and mortar, the service vehicle workforce. And I want to be sure that we're being inclusive of the ongoing need to for these vehicles to be in the mix in terms of data. It's a non-tech oriented businesses. They're service oriented. Many of them are Black, Brown, BIPOC businesses. And I guess my question is there any out of the box thinking about creating where you have employer hubs employee hubs, carpooling, thinking about EV vehicles and getting subsidization for EV vehicles for folks who have service non-traditional entrepreneurial enterprises that are service oriented, like landscapers, home repair, housekeeping, homekeeping. You get what I'm saying? Because these are folks who will continue in this kind of work. And are we not thinking about including this need and showing data that shows whether that is a static number or whether due to pandemic the number has increased? I'm seeing the number increase, and that's just because I think folks are starting out in their own businesses, non-bricks and mortar, because the bricks and mortar is too expensive and not accessible. So I'm posing this to y'all because this is something that's invisible, and yet we know that these are the services that buoy the very people who are working at home.
Yeah, so we have not gone down the specifics like that. This is a long range plan. I think we're up a little bit higher, than down on those type of specifics. However, I mean, if it involves travel, if it involves trips, that is something that will be shown when these samples are done every year to inform the travel demand model. So if that's a phenomena, and if it happens enough, it's going to show up and it's going to be part of that survey, and it would be part of the travel demand model. So I hope I answered your question.
I guess what I'm saying is, are you going to specifically start to look at that, knowing that it exists and uplifting it and validating its existence ahead of maybe hopefully anticipating it'll show up, looking for it and starting to quantify it?
No, I mean, it's not in the plan. I can tell you that right now, to be honest. But I'm interested in it. So, I mean, if you could help, not right now, but at some time, help explain this a little bit more to me. I think I could answer your question better and would have a better idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I'll point out is that Jackie Crone and Costanza Gomez, both at Durham Tech, have been working with us with the El Centro and the Cell. And so, that's one of the lenses that I have where I know that this is a strong, it's a strong pathway to economic advancement, and there's a lot of folks who are involved in taking courses so that they're doing plumbing and electrician work, et cetera, and so I'm being very much aware of that. I know that they're looking to be they're going to be in vehicles. And so I want to be sure they are included in some game plan for EV vehicles to be, somehow subsidized and available for, to switch them over from fossil fuels and cut the emissions.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Thank you for that. So I'm looking toward maybe working toward a resolution. I know Sammy's already suggested something he wants to add into our resolution, that we have received the presentation and emphasizing our support of the visionary alternative. And I see Sammy has his hand up again. So Sammy, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Lydia. I just had a question in terms of the visionary alternative. I know that you mentioned the percentages of funding would need to change to make that possible. So you have an assumption that those things could happen. The question I have is, given that the approved kinds of funding is literally killing us, if we don't get those assumptions aligned with whatever legislation is necessary to allow us to spend the money in a life-giving way, do we have the power to not spend the money at all towards infrastructure that is killing us? Is that an option for what, like I can imagine the visionary scenario comes before us and then those assumptions aren't playing out. Can we still abide by our visionary scenario by simply not making use of funds that don't align with it?
Yeah, let's go to Andy to answer that, and then I could pipe in. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, so the heart of funding is what I mentioned earlier, the Transportation Improvement Program, TIP, and the MPO does a TIP, and the state does a TIP. And if they don't match, you don't have a TIP. So we would have to, I guess the word that comes to my mind is spite, because we would be injuring ourselves. With no TIP, we wouldn't get transit funding either. We wouldn't get bike and ped funding. We wouldn't get any funding. We could not have any further federal actions. So that's the hard part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So Randy, your hand, is that still up from earlier? Okay. So I see Barbara has her hand up now. Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Damon and Andy and Zach and everybody that's just consistently working on transit and everything associated with transit. My question is about outreach. I see this slide here. So we're talking about, on average, communities of color have X, Y, Z, and you present data. And I saw, I think on maybe a previous slide or after this, how you had some focus groups for a community of concern. So I'm always about access and having these voices at the table. And so I'm wondering, how much are they at the table? When you have these focus groups, I see you use email quite a bit. You got public affairs notices, social media. Do you use anything that's not web-based to reach out to people? And who is represented in the focus groups? Are we seeing the people that you speak about in your data from the slide that was just up here, not this one where you're presenting some information?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. When we've done our surveys, only about 7 or 8% of the respondents have been African American, for example, and that's not what the general population is. It's much, much higher. So we've had 2 focus groups so far. I've been in both of them. I mean, just observing, and everyone in there has been either African American, a Spanish speaker, or young. And we've had some seniors too. So it's usually seniors, young, African American, and Hispanic. At both, so far we had 10 in the first one and 12 in the next one. And so we have 2 more focus groups. And they've been very informative. I thought they've been very good. And so, there are several legs, I guess you might call, to let's call the public engagement table, and the focus group is one of them. And so, it will, it will get emphasis since it's one of them. So,
okay. So thanks for that response. And then I guess my last question is, folks that are actually sitting in the seats like you sit in, and Damon and Lydia, do you have, folks of color there in the MPO? And I just wonder about all that, because, the representation piece is important, and it does matter, especially it matters to me, to see someone that looks like me sitting at that table. And so I was just wondering, the focus group, that's fine, but I'm just wondering at your level, or Damon or Lydia or anybody else sitting around the table, do you have a diverse group of folks?
Yeah, so there's we have 4 planners. One's part-time. Two, is it right? No, we have 5. I'm sorry. Three are white males. One is female African American, and another is female white. And then the director of the MPO is African American. And that's it at the MPO.
And that's good.
No.
Don't get me wrong, that's real good, and I'm glad to hear that. And thank you for the presentation and for sharing the information.
Yeah, they're all smarter than me too, believe me. I really appreciate.
Oh, y'all are smart. You're smart together.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Barbara. I'm going to pass it over. Damon's next, but also I'll speak. I know our MPO, the electeds, we've had a very diverse group over the years that I've been on it, and many of the folks that are around the table. So I would say that as well. Damon.
Yeah, and Barbara, thanks for raising those questions. And part of another project that actually Andy is quite involved in with the MPO staff is developing we have been working on developing a public outreach and engagement strategy and so on. And Andy's been part of developing that plan and defining what the outcomes are and so on. And there's been a lot of discussion around that and making it meaningful. So it is important to us on the board as well. I wanted to, just kind of appreciate Sammy's idea for maybe adding some language to the resolution around, supporting the MPO staff doing this work around a more visionary alternative. I just will say as a member of the MPO board, maybe what would be helpful is simply affirming what we have already directed the staff to do, which is essentially to develop an alternative that does reflect our policy priorities around climate change, environmental impacts, racial equity, and some other things that were listed in our direction to the staff. But I don't know if that's what Sammy had in mind and if we're ready for a motion of that kind, but it would be nice to, have some affirmation there.
Yeah, if that's in the form of a motion with that inclusion of that support of the the visionary model, I think that's what Sammy suggested. I think if that's a motion, Damon, make it, and we'll see if we get a second here.
I'll second that.
So motion by Damon, second by Sammy. All right, great, thank you. And Sammy, you had your hand up. Do you have further comments?
Yeah, no, I was going to go along those lines too, and I would like to add a friendly amendment to be very clear about the climate goal of remaining below 1.5 degrees as a very specific thing to look to do. It really stood out to me the 16% increase of CO2 under all those business as usual scenarios, and I think it behooves us to be clear about kind of the urgency by including that kind of information.
Damon, are you good with that friendly amendment?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Damon, a second by Sammy, and then Susan, you have comments?
I had a really quick question, just so I understand. When you mentioned this visionary amendment, is that referring to this altogether scenario? Is that no? Help me out with this on the visionary.
So the MPO board received the presentation that you all received tonight.
Mm-hmm.
In response to that presentation, there was some good discussion around many of the topics that we've all discussed here tonight. And at the end of that meeting, at the end of that item, the MPO board directed the staff to essentially develop another scenario, or at least one other scenario that is more visionary. And that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was on mute. I was saying, yeah. Sorry, Damon.
Oh, that's okay. I can tell you that our direction to staff was essentially to develop an alternative or develop a scenario that reflects the MPO's priorities around climate change. I can read from my notes here: around climate change, environmental impacts, racial equity, safety, human health and well-being, and that was sort of the direction of staff. That's what Andy and his team are working on. So we received the 3 alternatives you saw presented here tonight. Our response to that was, we want another alternative, and we want that alternative to reflect our values around those issues.
Got that, Susan?
That's it. Thank you, Damon.
All right, very good. All right, good discussion, y'all. All right, so we have a motion then by Damon, second by Sammy, for this resolution and that additional language. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
And Susan?
Aye.
All right, very good. All right, Andy, thank you for spending some time with us. Is Andy still here? Oh, there we go. Andy, thank you for spending time with us tonight. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. That's great comments. Appreciate it.
Y'all, you
Thanks for
take
your
care.
time.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Manager, on to our last agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor. Our last item under other matters is a status report on the American Rescue Plan Act funding. The purpose of this item is to amend the ARPA grant project ordinance to reflect the final award amount, update the council on grants to small businesses, and provide information on interviews with nonprofit human service organizations and the first steps for obtaining public input on possible ARPA priorities. And I believe our Finance Director, Arch McAdoo, will talk about the budget ordinance.
Good evening.
Hey, Arch.
Hey, Arch.
Hey, how's everybody this evening?
We're good. We're good. We can hear you, and now we can see you. All right. Hello there.
Okay.
Arch McAdoo. Hey, Arch.
Hey, how's everybody?
Good.
Okay. I'll be brief with regards to the budget amendment. As you know, we had been told that the town was going to get $6.2 million, but when they did the final tally, we got a little bit more money, about a little over $6.7 million. And we needed to fold that into our budget appropriation for this special revenue fund. And that's what this does. We have not changed any of the prior allocations that's been designated by the council. And instead, the additional revenue was put in the restricted unallocated category. So it is still there to be allocated. Later on, once we get into a development of the of the programs and the comprehensive plan for using these monies, we will then bring another budget amendment for you to realign that with the priorities and programs that you establish. So basically, we have the one attachment which shows the amendment to the American Rescue Plan grant project, and it shows $6,753,188 now. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Arch. Any questions for Arch? Let's see, Jackie.
Thank you. Arch, thank you for this. And on behalf of the whole town, thanks for all the work you've done on this throughout the past year and a half. I really appreciate it. I just have one little change that I'd like to make. On the first line where it says grants to small businesses, could we change that to grants to small businesses and nonprofits? I know we have nonprofits that are getting funding because they're providing direct services to people who are being impacted by the pandemic, and that's great. Mm-hmm. We also have nonprofits that aren't providing direct services, who need funding in the same ways that our small businesses do. And I know we've done that in the past. So if we could just add grants to small businesses and local nonprofits, then that might take away any anxiety on the part of our local nonprofits who are hoping to be able to get some of this funding.
Yeah, we can make that change.
Thank you.
Under number 2 there, under the expenditures where it says that, is that right, under the resolution?
Yeah, in the resolution where, under number 2. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else, any comments, questions, thoughts for Arch? If not, we'll take a motion.
Approve. Sorry, one more comment. Sorry. I appreciate Jack.
Let me just real quick. Let's get Jackie said a motion. I saw Barbara's hand for the second for this resolution. Go ahead, Sammy.
Yeah, I appreciate Jackie. You're bringing in nonprofits. I read in the abstract. Staff is looking and surveying the various nonprofits. My only caveat is to make sure once we get that information on what the needs are further, that we perhaps even bump up to 300,000 to make sure that we're not chipping away at what our locally owned businesses would have gotten dedicated to them solely. So just to keep an eye out for that, Mr. Manager, depending on what staff learns from our local nonprofit.
And I see Mr. Manager has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just had a clarifying question. So in this line item, it shows that you're allocating 300,000 for small businesses, but does that also include that same amount for nonprofits as well? Is my understanding you're going to come back later to consider different funding for nonprofits?
Well, I think there are 2 kinds of nonprofits I was talking about. One are the people who provide direct services to folks like food, housing, medical care, like during the pandemic. But then we also have nonprofits who do other services that aren't in those categories. And last time, those nonprofits received funding for paying employees, for upgrading their HVAC systems so that they would be, that they would clean the virus out more, for those kinds of things. So it's not the direct service nonprofits, although certainly they would qualify too. It's all the ones who do all the things we need that aren't necessarily food, health, shelter, which was what our focus was is our focus during the pandemic. Does that make sense?
Can I ask this clarifying? Let me ask this clarifying question, because so what we see on this resolution, grants to small businesses, we see 300,000, and then we see, some 4 million, restricted unallocated funds, and we see that in this abstract, Mr. Manager is saying that there's this study going on about what nonprofits may need or not need, and that we'll get some kind of information back. So it might be, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe that the monies that are going to be allocated toward the nonprofits aren't really supposed to be a part of this 300 yet until we get more information back with regard to the nonprofit report. Is that
all nonprofits, or is that limited to the critical nonprofits during the pandemic of food, housing, healthcare? Is that all nonprofits regardless of what their focus is?
Yeah, Mr. Manager, do you have an answer to that?
And I do not. That's what I was seeking. Just how are we defining nonprofits? I think I understand the distinction that Councilwoman Gist is making, but it's a little confusing. I think if we call those nonprofits as well, unless we define what we mean.
I'm defining a nonprofit as a 501c3, and that would include organizations that like the Dispute Settlement Center, which provides a very needed service to our community, but it's not health, food, or housing. And there are numerous other ones that do. We have educational nonprofits. We have nonprofits that provide access to childcare. There's just a whole range. So nonprofits aren't always the food, housing, and healthcare. So I guess I'm defining them as 501c3s.
Well, if you recall in back in June when we brought this to the council. At that point in time, we were only focusing on small businesses. That's what the $300,000 represent. And it was our position at that time was that the nonprofits had just gotten human services funding and that we needed to go out and have some dialogues and conversations with those nonprofits. So bottom line is we have not allocated any of this money for nonprofit. That decision has not been made about how much money we want to set aside for nonprofits and what activities do we want to fund with the nonprofits.
But I think if we focus on activities that, because of the pandemic, we will be forced to focus, as we should, on dire needs like health, housing, and food. But there are other nonprofits that are part of our community that did receive money early on in the pandemic for payroll protection. And those are the ones that I don't want to see left out. We have nonprofits that deal with people who are recently being released from prison. But it sounds to me, Arts, like what you're talking about will focus on the dire needs, which we should, but I don't want the other nonprofits left out.
All right, Jackie, hang on just a minute. So it looks like Rebecca has her hand up in the other room. Kathy, can we, Arch and Mr. Manager, is it okay if we bring Rebecca over since she has her hand up I don't think, it doesn't seem to me like we're going to exclude any of these groups from this funding. I think it's just the way that staff is kind of going about figuring out what pot of money and how to prioritize or how to set aside the money for the different groups. That's how I kind of took it. Rebecca, I see you're in the room now. Hey, it's good to see you.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
And I see John too. So
yes, great. So I just wanted, I was listening to Councilmember Guest's comment, and I just wanted to make sure that she knew that John has been working closely with our staff and with Arch to make sure that we don't have any gaps, just exactly for what she's talking about. So organizations like the Dispute Settlement Center, which might kind of fall between the lines, that we make sure that they can receive funding, that the policy is developed in such a way that we can cover those types of organizations. And I believe John is bringing his policy recommendations to you sometime soon, and it's been crafted very carefully with Arch and Nick's consultation to make sure that those organizations can be covered. And Anne Marie has been reaching out to all human services agencies, not just those serving food and shelter and things like that, but everyone, childcare, mental health, everyone that she possibly can speak with.
Okay, thank you.
So does it, just by way of those comments, is it accurate for us to change this ordinance to say that 300 is grants to small businesses and nonprofits, or does that make things any weirder? Is it okay to make that change, or is it a different way you were thinking of those different pots of money? Anyone can answer.
Well, I think that we can leave it
I would like
where it is, since that was specifically, since that $300,000 was identified specifically for small businesses. Then later on, as we make decisions about nonprofits, we might want to change and modify that classification to say small businesses and nonprofits and add more money in there for them. Or we could keep the nonprofits as a separate entity, separate line item.
Well, I guess one question is, does it sound like it'll be pretty soon that we'll have some, regardless, it sounds like the guidelines around nonprofits will have to be developed also, in addition to what John is doing in terms of grants. John, your grants for small businesses, can nonprofits apply for those, or is it just for regular businesses?
Yeah, so the way the draft policy is currently written, we would allow nonprofits to apply, but we're trying to, as Rebecca had mentioned earlier, we're really trying to make sure that that we're each trying to do our own respective thing. So I think maybe the best way, and Councilmember Gist, please, correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe the best way to explain it would be to say business and nonprofits, and then maybe human service organizations as kind of one group, and then business and nonprofits as another, to really kind of get at nonprofits that provide a product or service.
So
I don't know if that language would work or not, John, because human services goes beyond food, housing, and healthcare. I know we dealt with this before. I remember having this conversation last spring and in 2020.
Well, okay, all right, hang on just a minute, everyone stay in the room. I know Sammy's been wanting to say something, and then we'll go to Barbara. So go ahead, Sammy.
Yeah, I just would like to suggest that we go forward with how staff was thinking. As Arch reminded us, we'd already done the human services funding. I totally hear, Jackie, that some of those nonprofits may have not been funded. So I think what's important here is how soon we might get that report, so that we can then be thinking about what to allocate in terms of and who to allocate, because that's the question Jackie's raising specifically. We can have that conversation at that time. And for now, we just go forward with the 300,000 for businesses. I think the logic staff had and we had was a good one. We just allocated some funds, but we do want to have it sooner than later, because some of those nonprofits might have not qualified, as Jackie's point is being made. So if we could have that sooner than later, that could resolve all of these issues, and then we wouldn't be kind of diluting what we've identified as necessary funds for our locally owned businesses.
Thanks, Sammy. Barbara.
Yeah, and this may be what Sammy was just saying in a different set of words, but I mean, it says here that the staff is supposed to meet in the next few weeks to create the framework to assist us for development of an ARPA funding plan, including assistance to nonprofits and human services organizations. So it sounds to me like staff was going to put nonprofits and human services together. Is that correct? And that's something that was coming anyway? And small businesses would stay in their category, and then nonprofits and human services would be in their category. Is that right?
That was my understanding. It seems like the small business program was already on its own individual track. And so what I've talked to staff about is creating a comprehensive plan that would incorporate the nonprofit human services and any other needs we might have, so the council could fully see what all those needs are and begin to make some decisions based on your priorities with the remaining funding that we'll get through this program.
Okay, well, it seems to me, thanks, Barbara. It seems to me like staff has a plan to bring that forward to us also sometime sometime in the next couple of weeks, it sounds like. And it seems like they're kind of clearly delineate these two, and that they're both going to have their own shot at the apple, the shot at the monies. So I'm almost kind of thinking we ought to stick with the way it's originally written, Jackie, and given that we're going to be having this discussion around nonprofits and perhaps a significant large amount of money to allocate toward them very shortly. Susan, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Manager, thank you for that clarification. And I just wanted to follow up with one question. If the small businesses are sort of moving along their own track, $300,000 is allocated. I think I read somewhere that the grants would be up to $20,000. Knowing that lots of small businesses are hanging by a thread, to what extent, what is the timing in terms of starting to advertise for those grants, and what is your rough time frame in terms of when those grants will actually be awarded?
So my understanding is, John, help me if I get this incorrect, is once you all adopt the policy around how the small business program will work, once that policy is adopted, then we should be immediately begin to move to advertise for those funds. John, if I said that incorrectly, please step in.
Nope, you're correct. You got it.
Gotcha. Okay, I didn't realize we still needed to approve that policy on the small businesses. So
I think next Tuesday, am I right? Next Tuesday, they'll come back to us in some form, and then after that, we'll be able to get that going. So yes. I think that's just Susan.
Right.
Okay, so coming back around again to this conversation, I think we have a motion on the floor from Jackie and seconded by Randy that added nonprofits to small businesses. Jackie, would you be willing?
I'll withdraw it.
Okay, so we're going to go with the original. Will you make a motion then for just the original resolution then?
With the promise that we'll get a nonprofit thing before us really soon. Yes, I'll make the original motion.
Okay, all right, very good. So so motion by Jackie, and then Randy, will you second that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. So no further discussion. Let's vote on that then. All in favor say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
All right, very good. Okay, thanks y'all. So we'll get some follow-up on that shortly then. All right, that was our last item. Sammy.
Thank you. Just one quick item I'd like to bring up. Before our summer break, I mentioned as part during the climate presentation that we should work to find, recruit, and for membership to the climate team, and we haven't succeeded at that. And I haven't, been pushing for this because I agree with Barbara. It's essential to have diversity on that committee. So what I'd like to suggest is that we move forward with appointments at our next meeting and hold a seat to fill that. And that way we'll be following our town council appointment policy, which says that if there's no quorum for an advisory board, we would appoint, irrespective of diversity existing or not. So I'd like to make a motion directing our clerk to follow through with our policy and bring forward the current applicants, and with the possibility of holding an opening or even adding a seat if necessary for diversity.
Okay, all right. So Sammy made a motion, and let's not go on and on about this because it wasn't really on the agenda. But let's have a little brief discussion. Susan, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to be making a final comment. It wasn't related to this.
A comment about a different comment?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any follow-up to Sammy's comment?
Yeah, I do. And I appreciate what Sammy is saying, but we had said in the beginning, because this is a new commission, we have the opportunity to start it off on the right foot, which means with diverse faces and voices. This is what we said. This is the discussion that we had. And so, the quorum issue to me is a moot point because the commission hasn't even started to meet yet. And the problem with holding the seat is we're going to move forward with no representation about the very communities that are going to be most impacted by climate change. This is the issue I have, and that it's okay to hold a seat. That seat may never be filled. It's on us. It's on all of us. There are Black and brown people in this community. And that's just my opinion. If I sound angry, I am. Because I don't think it's fair to move forward. We've had this conversation already. And we're still here.
Yeah, I totally respect your perspective, Barbara. My concern
I don't have
is,
anything else to say. You can go ahead. I made my point.
so my concern is, we are in a climate emergency. It is, equity to act on climate, and I haven't been pushing this for the summer, the whole winter break. I've been trying to recruit. I haven't had success, and what the cost is that we're not implementing our climate action plan. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm just trying to find a point of moving forward with something that is necessary. Fires are getting worse, floods are getting worse, and it's time to take some action. I've tried my best to try to recruit. I think we have a policy that speaks to quorum. The spirit of that is to make sure that we are doing the work with those advisory boards, and that we not hold off on that work because of a lack of diversity. And that's why we have that policy written as it is.
let's take Randy's comment, and then I feel like this, if we're going to continue this conversation or go on more about it, we ought to schedule it for another meeting, because I feel like it's kind of late, and we've had this conversation a lot. So go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, number one, I agree with you. I think this has to be discussed as an agenda item on its own. That's number one, because this, I don't think we should Band-Aid this around the Climate Action Committee. I do want to say the Environmental Advisory Board is picking up slack. They've been doing this. It's not easy for them to do this when they have other reviews, but they have been doing that. And you know, I'm with Barbara on this, because the bottom line is that were we not to make this an imperative now, not only could we find ourselves in a situation where a seat that's designated is not filled, but what happens when you know, folks have to cycle off the board? So we must address the systemic change here and now, and there is an advisory board, the EAB, which will continue to do the work. They're not doing it at the quick pace, but they understand the work and they're doing the work. But I think it uplifts the Climate Action Committee to start with, when they know they have been created with equity and justice environmentally put at the forefront. So, you know, I would like to recommend that we schedule a time that we talk about filling the seats, and specifically how we want to address this problem.
And you also can go ahead and vote, but just know you will not get my vote for it, not because I don't, you know, believe in climate change mitigation and I don't support it, but because I don't see anybody there that looks like me. And that's important too. The window has closed on that like centuries ago.
All right. So I suggest we put off this discussion and call it an evening, y'all. So who would like to make a motion to adjourn tonight?
I motion we adjourn, Mayor Lavelle. Thank you.
All right.
And I'll encourage everyone to recruit. I mean, this can be solved if we could just find somebody, you know.
Yes, absolutely, Sam.
I agree with that. And I think, you know, I don't think we need to have a discussion on agenda about it. We need to recruit people to be on these committees, and that's on all of us, and let's go do it. And I appreciate that people are out there doing that. And it's hard work. We just have to do it. We don't have to talk about it anymore. Let's go recruit people.
All right. Motion by Barbara to adjourn, second by everyone. Susan. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Oh, sorry. Before we all leave, I just wanted to quickly say to Mr. Manager that it was really great having you here for our first meeting. And we're all, you know, really excited about working together with you. So
we are. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for saying that. I'm sorry I forgot to go back to you. It's been great having you here tonight, Richard. Thank you for being patient with us tonight.
Yes.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all very much.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.